see you. Here we go. Story of the spies, the story of the Jewish spy who loved me. Here we go. The Jewish people. Okay, this is us, guys. Us, 3,300 years ago. We are coming out of Egypt on Pesach, right? We came out of Egypt. And a few weeks ago, we had Shavuot. So then we got the Torah. Then we did some kind of desert work, because the whole point, the whole purpose of us as a people was to get to our homeland, to get to the land of Israel, to get to Eretz Yisrael, which those of us who are living there, you're so blessed, so fortunate. For 2,000 years, it was so hard to live there. Now it's super easy, apart from quarantine right now for some of us. So we're about to go to Israel, and Hashem said, Yalla, now is the time. However, tragically, and it's one of the greatest tragedies ever, because as the great Arizal writes, even the golden calf, we were primarily forgiven by Hashem, but the spies, it seems we weren't really forgiven, and we're still trying to fix the sin of the spies. And I want us to keep relating it to us at the end, how we're also, when we become spies, tragically, how we need to fix that. But first and foremost, this is what happens. Nice to see you, Kim. Here's what happens. We were meant to go to Israel. Hashem said, go to Israel. Can you imagine, it's the summer. Everybody who's in England now, David, you and Andrew, I can see David, another David, you're in London. Hashem says, time to go to Israel. So this summer you're going to Israel. But what the spies said was the following. And first of all, it wasn't the spies per se, it was the people, the Jewish people, as lot. We were it's like if any of you, if I said to any of you, you're going to go to summer holidays, a great location, amazing villa, what are you going to say to me? What are you going to say to me? You're going to say, let me see the photos. I want to see it. Send me online the link. That's what you're going to see. And then you're going to do some Google Maps and start browsing over it and do some stalking and seeing exactly what it looks like, how it is, how big the swimming pool is. So that's what we did too. We said we needed to see it with our own eyes, but it wasn't just about checking out how big the swimming pool was. There was a logical reason as well. There was lots of dangerous people there, as Ben's favorite topic about the giants, which I don't know how much we're going to go into the giants tonight, Ben, but there were giants there. It was scary dudes. How are we going to win that war? They wanted to check out the terrain. They wanted to work out a plan, a strategy of how we were going to go and conquer Israel. And they begged Moshe. They said, Moshe, please let us send spies. Moshe goes to Hashem. He says, Hashem, I'm really embarrassed to tell you this. A little bit of a problem here with the people. We know we've been planning to go to Israel, and that's the plan. Small request to ask you, Hashem. They want to see the photos. They want to check it out first. They want to go themselves first to check it out. Hashem gives the green light. We'll elaborate more about that shortly. But Hashem says, it's going to be a very dangerous mission. Send the best of the best. If you're going to spy it out, it's got to be the best spies, the very, very best spies. And therefore, the head of each of the tribes, the head of Reuven and Shimon and Levi, the heads of each tribe were the ones that was sent to spy out the land of Israel. So now we've got 12 of the holiest dudes ever going to Israel. And Moses gives them a questionnaire. Moshe gives them a questionnaire of what to look out for, what not to look out for. They come back. And maybe I'll say one other thing. Hashem tried to help them a little bit. So, for example, it was Ben talking about the giants. He made one of the great people called Eov. The book of Job is about the Eov. Eov, who was a tzaddik, passed away when they were there. The 40 days that they were traveling, again, it's 40 days. The 40 days that they went to Israel to check it out, to spy out the land. He made a miracle to have this great tzaddik dying, so everyone should be focused on the funeral, and to give them a fair, free space to go and get the land, get some pomegranates, get some figs, get some grapes, check out the fruit, bring it back to the people, and on the 8th of Av, they now arrived back to the desert, about to spread the insights of how fabulous Israel was. And they started off by saying, Israel's magnificent. It's a land flowing with milk and honey. And then they said, but, however, people die there. And there's giants there. Okay, Ben used to talk about the giants. And they say the A word. What's the A word? Amalek. Amalek, who the origins of the Nazis, they were there. They said Amalek, and everyone's freaking out because everyone knows how scary Amalek is. In fact, Just when we came out of the splitting of the Red Sea, Amalek came. Even then, they had the audacity to fight us. And we had this terrible war with Amalek at that point. And they said the word Amalek, and we all started trembling and crying. And then they came up with these crazy conclusions that we couldn't win. We're not going to win. We're not going to conquer the land, and we should stay in the desert. Rather, stay in the desert. They spoke Lashon Hara. They spoke evil reports about Israel, about Hashem. And Kalev and Joshua got up and tried to fight back and tried to dissuade them. But they kept fighting on, and they kept fighting on. The whole Jewish people started crying. The whole people started crying. And Hashem says famously, the tragic line, "You're crying for nothing. I'll give you something to cry about." They were crying on the 9th of Av. That sowed the seeds of the destruction of the first Beis HaMikdash on the 9th of Av, Tisha B'Av. The second Beis HaMikdash on Tisha B'Av. We were thrown out of Spain in Tisha B'Av. The First World War began on Tisha B'Av. And there's still so many chaotic events happening in the world, all as a result of the spies. Because not only to speak Lashon Hara is bad enough, but to speak Lashon Hara about the land of Israel, to speak Lashon Hara about Hashem is as bad as it gets. And what actually happened is Hashem said to Moshe, after Moshe pleaded with Hashem to forgive them, because Hashem was willing to kind of start again, but Moshe pleaded, and Hashem said, okay, what we'll do is the men who were the ones who were guilty, between 20 and 60, are never going to see the land of Israel. And every year on Tisha B'Av, they have to dig, and this, if my grandchildren are watching, they should, Brocky, don't let them hear this part, they should dig their own graves, and if they get up in the morning, then lucky them. And what happened for the next 39 years, every male between 20 and 60 dug his own grave. And some of them got up in the morning and some of them didn't. In fact, the whole festival of Tu B'Av actually originates from the fact that 39 years later, on the 9th of Av, when the last remaining ones between 20 and 60 dug their own graves and they were alive the next day, they were worried. Maybe they got the wrong day. So they waited till the moon was at its largest, when it was a full moon, to the 15th of Av. And only on the 15th of Av, and they were still alive, did they realize, and then they celebrated. And it was in the day of incredible celebration for the Jewish people. That was the day when actually prophecy, true prophecy that Moshe Rabbeinu had, face-to-face prophecy, came back to Moshe Rabbeinu on the 15th of Av. And that's when we came into Israel. That was the story of the spies in a nutshell. But now let's try and go through it and explain what amazing, amazing lessons, what life-changing lessons we can learn from it. I mean, there's a few questions we have to ask just before we even begin. Question number 1 is the following. Was it right or wrong to send spies? Answers on Facebook right now. Was it correct or incorrect to send spies? Mark, amazing to see you. I love seeing you every time. Thank you for joining. And this is the question. Was it correct or incorrect to send spies? Very simple question. What do you say, everybody? I'll have a bit of water. I can't hear you. Anyone? Come on, Jonathan. You're normally first up for it. Benj, what do you think? Correct. Thomas in the house. Thomas, thank you so much for holding on to all my stuff for the past 3 months. I didn't realize it'd be 3 months. So my daughter and David saying wrong. Anyone else like to disagree with, don't really mess with a leading lawyer and my daughter. Probably wouldn't mess it. And Benj is messing and John, wow, it's 2-2. This is exciting. We've got 2-2. Benj is now going 3-2. We can have a whole game of this for the next hour if we want. 3-2 for the incorrect to send spies. Would anybody like a final change? Come on, we've got 3-2. I know there's a few more of you watching there. Was it correct or incorrect to send spies? Dum, dum, dum. Lani is going in there with 3-3. We'll end off in a draw. And let me explain to you, was it correct or incorrect? So let's have a look at the Pasuk. So I photoed for you the Pasuk on my Facebook profile. But if you can't see that and you want to be really holy, just get a Chumash. If anybody's got a Chumash, or if you've got another computer in front of you, it's now 4-3. This is getting complicated to try and remember. If you've got a computer in front of you, go to Chabad.org if you want. Download Chumash. Parsha Shelach lecha. And let's have a look at the first few verses. Thanks, Thomas. You haven't sold all my stuff. Brocky, your kids, they've got to be over bar mitzvah. Sorry, you can't add that in. And we're all relatives, so it doesn't work. So here we go. Watch this. Says the Pasuk. Hashem said to Moshe, saying, Shlach lecha anashim. Send spies, send men. In fact, he says anashim. Now, who said, Brocky, did you say it was I've totally lost who said it was right or wrong. It seems, though, from the Pasuk that Hashem himself says, Yalla, send them, Shelach lecha anashim, send spies. So it seems that it was correct to send spies. And I'll add to that perspective from the following, that, listen up, do you know why they sent spies? Because Hashem does not allow us to rely on a miracle. If you're going to invade a country, what you need to do is check it out. You've got to sort out the army. You can't just go in there blindly saying, Hashem will protect me. That's kind of dumb. Hashem doesn't ask us to do miracles. You're not meant to walk in the middle of the streets. You're not meant to jump off huge buildings. You're meant to follow your brain, use common sense, and prepare. And what's one of the proofs that it was correct to send spies? Because when we went to Israel 39 years later with Joshua, do you know what we did, everybody? Rafael, Gabriel, are you there still? We and Shani, we sent spies. Talia, amazing to join you. Nice to see you, Talia. So we sent spies. We did send a spy in the end. So wait, hold your horses. Why did they get in such trouble if A, God tells them to do it, B, it kind of makes sense. It's called what we call, and Tali, you've learned this with me, hishtadlus. Remember that word? Tals? I spoke to you and Darren about hishtadlus. You can't just rely on a miracle. You've got to put your effort in. You've got to do, for Darren to make all the, please God, amazing money he's going to make. He's got to put the effort in. He can't just rely on a miracle. Exactly. So then, my daughter's asking that Hashem can't complain. Correct. So we'll discuss that in a minute. So why was it wrong to send spies if Hashem says send spies? We eventually sent spies with Joshua. It's logical to send spies. Watch this. And this is why you need to, all of you, become experts in Hebrew, experts in Torah, because otherwise you're missing the fun. My dear friends, people think, can't be bothered to learn. Why would I want to learn? Much more fun. Are you joking? There is nothing more honey. There is nothing more delicious. There's nothing more beautiful than the sweetness of Torah. So let me share with you something so sweet. What does Hashem say? Shelach lecha anashim. Why does he say lecha? He could have said shelach anashim. See, every word in Hebrew is pivotal. Everyone can see that if you've got the verse. Shelach lecha anashim, which in English means send for yourself spies. Why say for yourself? Just say send spies. Says Rashi, listen to this. Lecha, because ledatcha. Because you, Moshe, think it's a good idea for them to go. You, the people, want spies. I am telling you, terrible idea. You're going to regret it. And as Rashi says, I told you not to. But if you want to do it anyway. But boy, are you going to regret it. God says you're going to regret it. Watch this. And this, thanks, Clary, for joining. This is a really deep idea. How many times in life do we make really silly decisions, reckless decisions, irrational decisions, illogical decisions, daft decisions? But the people around us, the people who love us, kind of eventually see when you are so resolute and so convinced this is something you're going to do. We say lines like, if that's how you make your bed, you're going to lie in it. We're going to say, if that's what you really want to do, you've got to go and do it. The way the Talmud puts it in Tractate Makot, I think it's page 6. It says, B'derech she'adam rotzeh lelech, the pathway the man wants to go, Hashem's going to help him in that direction, for good or for bad. So even if we make terrible choices, horrific choices, Hashem's not going to stop us with a red, going to be stopped by a traffic light, a red light, saying, no, you can't go. It's not going to be like a animal's going to swoop, a eagle's going to swoop and take you away, save you. Unfortunately, we have free will. And unfortunately, we have to deal with the consequences of our decisions. And therefore, the way Hashem works is if we want to send spies, even though Hashem says, my dear friends, don't you trust me by now? I took you out of Egypt. How many more miracles do you want me to do? I did 10 plagues. They're pretty awesome. But it wasn't just that. I topped it with how I split the Red Sea, says Hashem. And I topped that again. And I gave you the success and the victory against Amalek. And I promised you that the land of Israel is going to be your destiny. In fact, I promised Abraham 400 years earlier. 400 years earlier, he said to Abraham, your future and your destiny is in the land of Israel. Ze lo maspik bishvilchem. It's not enough for you. You need to see it with your own eyes. Wow, you do that? Kind of your funeral. So we very much see from this Rashi that it was definitely wrong to send spies, though somewhat understandable. And what we do need to, because Brockie, my dear, as I've probably told you many times, when you didn't want to do when you did something that I didn't want you to do, I said, Brockie, you know what? It's your life. Do what you want. Never heard me say that. You have heard me many times say that. So Hashem's saying, it's your life. Do what you want. Shalach l'chan Hashem. You want to go? Yalla, go. It will be your funeral, your problem. You know, I said to some of you last week when just before I made Aliyah with my wife, we went to get a blessing from my great Rabbi, Rabbi, who was a great tzaddik, happened to be in England at the time, and he looked at me and he looked at my aura and looked at my wife and said, no. That's not, you shouldn't be going. You're not, don't go. It's a bad idea. And I said, Rabbi, and this isn't what you should say to your teacher, I said, I wish you'd have told me that a few months earlier, because kind of all my books are gone, our shipment's gone, our flights are booked. Like, we're going. Like, what do you want me to do? We're going. And he said, okay, you'll come back to me one day crying, essentially, he said. And we did. I got very ill there, and it all went pear-shaped. And then it happened to be that the Rabbi happened to be in Israel on our way back, because he lived in America, and I went to him, and he said straight away, remember what I said? You'll come back to me crying? I know you're crying now. Time to go back to England. But he goes, I'll give you a blessing. Rabbi said to me and my wife, you'll have amazing news in 9 months' time. And that's Brockie when your brother, Yitzi, was born. A consequence 9 months' time after Rabbi gave that bracha. So what I'm saying to you is, we make our decisions, and Hashem doesn't stop us when he makes bad decisions, which, by the way, everybody is very scary, because it means that, you know, we can really screw it up and we can make horrific decisions, and Hashem is not seemingly going to stop us. So that's the first step. But I'd like to try now to go into with you, and this is kind of life-changing, everybody. So please, don't go anywhere. This is it. This is the key thing. Sarah and I has to join it, because this is to come to the most important part. What really did they do wrong? Again, and why were they not allowed to send spies, but yet 39 years later, we were allowed to send spies? So the first principle you need to understand, as I said, this principle called Hishtadlut and Bitachon, which means since Adam and Eve sinned, as a consequence of Adam and Eve sinned, Hashem said to Adam, from now on, by the sweat of your brow, you shall eat bread. Now, unfortunately, we've got to live within the realms of nature. Now, most of the time, we have to live a natural way. Why? Because we're meant to find Hashem through nature, not because we're meant to worship nature, God forbid. That's called idolatry. We're meant to see Hashem through nature. And we can't rely on a miracle. That will take away our free will. And we plummeted as a consequence of the sin of Adam and Eve. And as a consequence, we now have to do hishtadlut. We now can't do miracles. We can't have miracles. But, and this is really important, the level of miracles and hishtadlut depend on your spiritual level. So now in 2020, when unfortunately, sorry to say, we're kind of at the bottom of the barrel, we're scraping the bottom of the barrel. Now, there's no overt miracles. There's a lot of hidden miracles, beautiful hidden miracles, but there's no overt miracles. Now, you know, you can't expect money to come down from heaven. We don't have manna from heaven anymore, per se. We can't rely on a miracle. However, listen up, listen so carefully. The generation of the desert was called the Dor Deo, the generation that came out of Egypt, saw Hashem. They had Moshe Rabbeinu as their leader. Today, who do we have as our leader, with due respect? They had Moshe Rabbeinu as their leader. They saw Hashem. They saw the 10 plagues. They saw, any of you ever gone swimming? Has the sea split for any of you? I don't know about you, it's never split for me. There's lots of jellyfish in the fish when I go, right? The sea ain't splitting nowhere. It's split for them. The sea split. That's ridiculous. Do you know what that means? We were standing at the sea saying, as like typical Jews, it's a bit cold, can't be bothered to go in. And what does Hashem do? Hashem says, I'm going to make it split. Just jump in, have emunah. And finally, Nachshon ben Aminadov jumped in, went to his neck, he still had faith, and it split. And then, my dear friends, for the next 40 years, we had the miracle of the manna from heaven. Nowadays, you're hungry, what do? Anyone? You order Deliveroo, right? You order Deliveroo and the kosher food comes to you, right? Can you imagine? I actually ordered my first salad this week. Biggest waste of money ever. Not doing that again. My mum was saying bagel, I shouldn't say that. Saying salads are great, but no, from now on it's back to shawarmas, I think, even though I've got a diet. That's another story. But we order Deliveroos. We order Deliveroos, everybody. We order Deliveroos. They didn't have to order Deliveroos. They didn't have to cook. They didn't have to go to McDavid's. Do you know what they did? Hashem brought them the food. They had these snowflakes, these white snowflakes, and they could taste. If you liked lettuce so much, you could taste of lettuce if you wanted, which I never understood because that should be reserved for Seder night of the Morah. But whatever, some people like lettuce. Some people like maybe connected to rabbits. But the point is that the mon could taste whatever you want. If you wanted it to be like, I would have probably lamb. I kind of like my lamb, to be honest, which is why I look like I look, right? And if you wanted it to be lamb or steak or chicken or Chinese, it would be whatever the heck it could be, because that was the miracle of the 40 years that we were in the desert. Hashem gave us manna. You know, nowadays we have air conditioning. Not that we need it in London, but in Eretz Yisrael, we definitely super need it, or we have what we have in England, central heating, a lot of central heating. You know what? They didn't need that there. Do you know why? Because Hashem gave them something called the clouds of glory, the Nanei Kavod, which was an air conditioner, central heating, a sat nav. It told them where they needed to go. It was just basically what I'm trying to get at, if you haven't chapped yet. It was the miracle season, miracle time, miracle. So here's the point, says Rav Dessler. Listen up. In a generation where Hashem does overt miracles right, left and center, like Rabbi Shimon Bar Yochai, for example, when he went to a cave and Hashem made a carob tree and stream of water appear outside, they were living on that level. They got the highest level. Hashem had taken off his mask. At that point, when Hashem takes off his mask and says, come with me to Israel, do you know what he meant to say? Sure, Hashem, whatever you want, I'm there. Just tell me when and where. My suitcases are packed. Let me just follow the clouds. You know, it says in Wizard of Oz, follow the yellow brick road. So we should just follow the clouds. Follow the clouds. But instead, as Muppets, do you know what we said? Whoa, Hashem, Hishtadlus. 1 minute, I've got to check it out. There's giants there. Ben's scared of the giants there. There's Amalek there. You know, we need to know what type of ecosystem is it there. You know, it's healthy. Should we go in the right? All of a sudden, we started freaking out. And explains the mystics. On their level, it was a lack of faith for them. We call it in Hebrew bitachon. Bitachon, which is interesting. Betach means certainty. They lack that. You know, the certainty and faith is the same word, because your faith should make it certain that you know that Hashem's going to look after you. Just the way, if my daughter's still watching, she's got a little baby there, Shani. Shani is certain that mummy's going to look after her. 100% certain. So we should all be certain that Hashem's going to look after us, especially in a time when Hashem's doing overt miracles. We shouldn't have to descend to the abyss of nature, God forbid. But we did in the time of the spies. And tragically, at that point, we said spies. Why? Because at that point, we had a lack of faith. So I want to now speak a little bit about bitachon and how our lives can change by, please God, internalizing this amazing insight called bitachon, called real trust in Hashem. Remember, emunah means faith. Emunah is almost easy. Emunah means, I know there's Hashem. That's easy. That what separates the men from the boys as such is who's really got bitachon, who can trust in Hashem when it's not going well. That's the king. Sasha, awesome to see you. Listen to this. You've come at a nice time. There was a great tzaddik called the Piacenza. Have you heard of him? And he's a tzaddik he wrote an amazing book called the Eish Kodesh, and he's a rabbi who tragically was in the Warsaw Ghetto. He was in the Warsaw Ghetto, and He died soon after in a death camp, tragically, and he wrote a sefer in the Warsaw Ghetto. Can you imagine? There's not many books came out of the ghetto, but thank God that's a book that came out. What's up, Kaplan? Nice to see you. Listen to what the Rebbe of Pizanza says. Listen up to what he writes. He says, when a person doesn't see any opening or path which seems possible using his brain and according to the rules of nature that can save him from his troubles or predicaments, at that point, when there's no hope, what you're meant to do is put your trust in Hashem and increase your emunah b'tachon. And he was telling this not from North London in 2020. He was saying this in the Warsaw Ghetto to the people who wanted to escape but didn't see any way possible to do so. He said, the Rebbe said, at times like this, it's better that one shouldn't seek to save himself via natural means because he won't find them anyway. And then his bitachon becomes weaker. Rather, one should say, Hashem is above the laws of nature and he will save me. It's so profound, those words, my friends. That means if any of you ever reach this point in life when kind of there's no hope, in other words, the laws of nature will tell you this ain't going to really happen. You're not going to be able to make your livelihood the way you want to, seemingly. You're not going to be able to, God forbid, get healthy, seemingly. You're not going to be able to get married, seemingly. You've tried all the options, all the natural things have closed off. What do you do at that point? Then actually it's easy. Because then you have a choice. You can either have hopelessness, you can either give in, you can fall into depression, or at that point you can say, nature can't help me now, Boris Johnson can't help me now, politicians can't help me now, the social service system can't help me now, only Hashem can help me. And at that point, our job is to try and hand it over to Hashem. And yes, there's times like the Rebbe during the Holocaust when nothing it seemed helped. Or, some of you know, my dad just passed away. There was a point when the doctors gave up. The great tzaddik said to me, now's your chance, really, because now you've only got Hashem. Now you don't even have to think that the doctors can help. But yet my dad died. Yet the Rebbe died. Yet sometimes tragedy happens. So the first point is, yes, sometimes tragedy happens. And as we learned last week, there's a bigger picture. There's something called Olam Haba. Everything is Latova. And then when things don't work out in this world, you can say, okay, Hashem's got a bigger picture. Hashem's still doing everything out of love. So something like the Holocaust, which definitely we can't go into now. The brief way of understanding it is, okay, we don't understand, but Hashem knew what he was doing. Somehow it's Latova. Somehow it's for our best. But thank God, most of the time, my friends, 99.9% of the time, there's no hest upon him in that way. There's no concealment of Hashem. There's no Holocaust. There's no tragedies. That has to be that level. Most of the time, Hashem is just wants us to turn to Hashem and say, Hashem, help me. Help me. Not just help me like, help me, but I'm asking 100 other people to help me too, and I'm just saying that just to tick a box. To say help me like your life depends on it. To say help me because instead of worrying about every eventuality for livelihood, like most people do, you have the level of understanding that we say in benching, Hashem is Hazones Hakol, Hashem nourishes everyone, everything, and therefore, Yalla! Yes, I'm going to do the natural things, but ultimately it comes from Hashem. And Hashem, I'm in your hands. If we can really say, Hashem, I surrender to you, watch the miracles happen in your life. And I want you to text me when those miracles happen. Because when you get to that place, maybe some of you have hit it, this place in the tunnel when you can't see any darkness, when you can't see any light, there's no light at the end of the tunnel. You've kind of almost given up. You're like, impossible. At that point, turn to Hashem and say, Hashem, over to you. You're the only one who's going to help me get through this now. And then watch Hashem do that. Let me give you some scenarios. So the Piazenza said that was the problem with the spies. And by the way, they were the heads of the tribes. My gosh, the heads of Reuven and Shimon. They should have known better, as the song goes. Should have known better. Right, they should have known better. They should have really known better. But yet, they believed in nature. As the Chovos HaLevavos, Duties of the Heart says, if you put your faith and trust in nature, Hashem will throw you to the shackles of nature. They were thrown to the shackles of nature when they should have been way higher. So that's definitely what they did wrong, according to the Piazenza. Let's continue. Give you a few cool stories. Listen to this story. Number one. So one of my favorite heroes of Tzaddikim is the Chofetz Chaim, Rabbi Yisrael Meir Kagan. Two stories about him. So there was a great Rav called the Ponovitch Rav, who was the rabbi who started the Ponovitch Yeshiva in Bnei Brak. But a few years before the Holocaust, he once came to Radin to speak to the Chofetz Chaim. He came to speak to the Chofetz Chaim. The Ponovitch Rav wanted it to be a short visit because he had another train to catch. But bizarrely, the Chofetz Chaim just kept on talking and kept on talking and kept on talking. And the Rav didn't want to be rude and say, I've got to miss my train. Because when the Chofetz Chaim talks, you kind of just listen and don't say, I've got to go now. So he stayed. He stayed and he missed his train. Later, the Ponovitch Rav heard that train he hoped to catch had derailed and people died. And his life was saved because he was protected by his clouds of glory of the Chofetz Chaim. That's crazy. Another story about the Chofetz Chaim. This was in the year 5663. We're now in the year 5780. Listen to this. 5663, there was a fire in Radin. That's the town he lived in Poland. 200 houses burned down. The fire stopped just before the Chofetz Chaim's home. His house didn't catch fire, and neither did the 26 houses after that. Can you imagine? 200 houses on the road. 1, 2, 3, 4. All got to the Chofetz Chaim's house. And then the next 26 houses, which, by the way, Hashem's numerical value of his name is 26, was saved. Soon after the fire, insurance agents were going from house to house in Radin selling fire insurance policies. The Chofetz Chaim wasn't home when the agents came to his home, and his family bought a policy. So, question for you, everybody. Now it's time for you to type. Should you buy insurance policies? Yes or no? Question 1. Question 2. Should the Chofetz Chaim and his family buy an insurance policy? Hope you're getting it now. Of course, for the Chofetz Chaim, who's a man of miracles. He doesn't need what we all need, which are insurance policies. And when he heard about it, he was really upset because he was on the level. He just wanted to be protected from the insurance policy called bitachon, trust in Hashem. He had so much trust in Hashem. He didn't want insurance policies distorting the consistency of faith and trust. And what happened? Noch, a year later, exactly, John, that's exactly what I said. A year later, there was another fire in Radin, and this time the Chofetz Chaim's house burnt down, as did the home of his married children. And the family said, Baruch Hashem, we insured our home. Phew, the Chofetz Chaim said, you sausages, you've missed the whole point. If we didn't insure the houses, we wouldn't have been burned down. Hashem would have protected us. He's only protected us because we had bitachon. The moment you put your trust in insurance policies, so now you've taken out of your trust from Hashem, so now we're subject to the laws of nature. And by the way, it's a true story again about the Brisker Rav, exactly the same thing. He was in Israel. It was during the air sirens in one of the wars in Israel. And when the air sirens was going, everyone goes to the bomb shelter. The big tzaddik, like the Brisker Rav, working on a different, he didn't want to leave his yeshiva, so he had sat on his chair by his table, and he didn't leave. Finally, there was one time when it was so severe, and the students were so worried, they said, Rabbi, we're schlepping you with. And they took him, and they schlepped him down to the bomb shelter. And at that point, a bomb came in and went right through his table. His table was destroyed. And they all said, we saved your life. You owe us your life. And the Rabbi looked at them and he cried and said, now I need a new table. If I wasn't, I'm getting there, Georgina. Wait for me. And now, says the Brisker Rav, now it's destroyed. So Georgina's telling me off now for being a dangerous leader telling people not to get insurance policies. I didn't say don't get insurance policies. Of course I would never say that. I've got insurance policies. Rabbis have got insurance policies. You should get, everybody, insurance policies. Absolutely. You get life insurance, you get fire insurance, you get home insurance, you get car insurance, get insurances. But, and here's what you need to understand, Georgina, because come on, this is a deep class. We can be deep. We can be deep. As we said, why did the spies, because we're talking about the context of why the spies were punished for sending spies, when really it's logical. You're meant to send spies. In fact, Joshua sent spies. And the deep answer, Georgina, is that on their level, they weren't like me and you and anyone in this generation. They were in a whole different ballgame. For them, it was wrong to send spies on their, and we know that for the fact that they all died. And by the way, I didn't tell you how the spies died. The spies themselves had a really awful death. They had to dig their grave, but Hashem made a miracle and their tongue grew and maggots climbed in and essentially ate them alive. That's how they died. Their maggots ate them alive. Oh my gosh, I'm getting in trouble now. Michael, for every... Okay, Michael and Georgina, let's get it clear. I'm not saying we shouldn't get life insurance policies or house insurance. We're not saying that because we are not allowed. We're not allowed. It's forbidden for us to do dangerous things. It's forbidden for us to pretend we're angels. Nachon. But the Chofetz Chaim was an angel. And the spies were meant to be angels. It was a generation of angels. Moshe Rabbeinu was an angel. We need to understand that. We need to understand there were some very holy dudes in this world that were with Hashem. They weren't like me and you. We need to understand that. They weren't like me and you. And therefore, on their level, it was way too much. It's like us maybe getting 100 insurance policies. You know, today I wanted to insure my father's car because, you know, I now, for the next few weeks, like to drive this car. And the insurance said to me, I don't know if it's true, you can tell me if it's true or not. They said, you can't insure a car twice. If your dad's insured the car, we can't insure it as well. Don't know if that's true. But the point is, you can't get 100 insurance policies. It's stupid to get 100. So for us, to get 100 insurance policies would be daft. I hope you'd admit. So what I'm saying is, for the great tzaddikim, which yes, none of us, we can't even imagine, we can't even fathom. It's not none of us. But for the spies, we're learning a piece of Chumash. For the people at the time of the Chumash, for the people called the Dardea who came out of Egypt, for them it was wrong to have an insurance policy because at that point, Hashem was looking after them and they couldn't handle. In that moment, they were much more in danger as a result of putting their faith in nature than putting their faith in Hashem. Any questions before we move on? Any questions? I tried, they wouldn't let me, but it's complicated, Johnny. You know, obviously my father couldn't tell them to put me on his policy, but that's another story. Any questions? Anyone got any more questions before we go on? So another cool story on that. Again, probably get in trouble for this story, but whatever. I'm in trouble tonight, so let's go for it. Great tzaddik called the Kedushas Levi, and again, this isn't for us. This is just for him, and the idea is to inspire us. We'll explain maybe a practical thing in a minute. The Kedushas Levi was once very ill, and his students were in the next room saying to him. Suddenly, they heard a loud sound. They went to the Rebbe's room, and they found him lying on the floor. Apparently, he fell off his bed, so they lifted him and returned him to his bed. Some hours later, the Rebbe called his students and asked for a cup of tea, a sure sign of improvement. A little while afterwards, he was standing on his feet totally well. He told his students, as I was lying on my bed, I reminded myself of how my Rebbe, the Maggid of Mezerich, who was a student of the Baal Shem Tov, explained the verse, and this is the point. Listen to this verse in Tehillim, one of my favorite verses in Tehillim, in number 32. It says, King David writes, Hapiteach B'Hashem, someone who puts his trust in Hashem. Chesed yisovevenu, kindness encircles him. Again, Hashem at times waits for us to have faith in Hashem, and then tremendous kindness can come our way. You could try it. So So the Maggid explains, this isn't a skula, it's a rule of nature. Whoever trusts in Hashem, he becomes enveloped in Hashem's kindness. So he said, I strengthen myself with batachon. I said, Hashem, I trust you. Hashem, I trust you. Hashem, I trust you. Hashem, I can trust you that I can walk. I trust you, I'm going to get better. I trust you. I got out of bed and I fell to the ground because I realized, says the Rebbe, that my bitachon wasn't perfect yet. I didn't have it. Didn't have it enough. So I began thinking about emunah bitachon more until I became perfectly healthy. And if you say that sounds bonkers, ridiculous, not so sure. Any of you have heard of NLP, Neuro-Linguistic Programming? Neuro-Linguistic Programming is a proven scientific method that can really help someone change the way they feel, change the way they think. And I can tell you from personal experience, as some of you know, I suffer with something called ME, myalgic encephalomyelitis. And there was, I think, about at least a year of my life when I was much younger, when I was in bed and I couldn't move. I couldn't even move my hand. And NLP really helped me. But NLP worked because, and there's a book I highly recommend you read called Healing Back Pain, which helped me, from Dr. Sarno. And one of the things he talks about is to say that you kind of can retrain your body through your mind. But you have to believe it. He says you have to believe it 100%. If you believe it 90%, it's not going to work. It's got to be 100%. And I remember I was doing NLP for months and months, and it really wasn't making much of a difference. And then one day I got in the park, and I remember it was a day I was in Hendon Park, and I said, wow, 1 minute, this is really true. And I believe it 100%. And I said to myself, Mazel tov, Avi, I'm better now. I said those words. And from that moment, things were changed. So I just like to substitute NLP for NLB, Neuro-Linguistic Bitachon, or if you want NLF, Neuro-Linguistic Faith, which was, I'm trying to say that instead of just we're in control of our mindset, the Kabbalists would say Hashem would like to take control, the way a mother likes to take control of a newborn, but we have to give over that control. Now let's be practical. So practically, and again, you can rewind to make sure I never ever said to anyone not to get house insurance. We need to get house insurance, unfortunately, because we are trapped in the realms of nature. In 2020, until Mashiach comes, we're stuck in a world of nature, according to Maimonides. Even when Mashiach comes, there's still going to be natural means. We still won't go back, especially initially, to the level of coming out the desert. But for us, mere mortals, when things are going badly in our life, and the easiest thing we can do is open up our Psalms and say, Hashem, I need your help. And then we say, I need your help. Think a little bit more. Only you can help. Just think it. Only you can help. Again, someone's ill. I'm not saying you shouldn't go to a doctor. Of course you know to go to a doctor, and you should go to the best doctors. But at the same point, I can assure you, the doctor's on the be-all and end-all, and sometimes they haven't got a clue. And yes, we need to go to the doctors, but we have to put our faith in Hashem. And that is what I'll say. And I'll never, pretend I didn't say that. I'm saying go to the doctors, go to insurance, but don't put your faith in insurance. Put your faith in Hashem. Don't put your faith, God forbid, in doctors. Same thing if any of you struggling with livelihoods. I know with Corona, a lot of people, things are very precarious right now. I get it. There's financial, a lot of issues going on. But at the same time, don't put your trust in the banks, or don't put your trust in that connection or in that business opportunity. Put your trust in Hashem. End of. I'm talking not about an action. I'm talking about mental. I'm talking about the way you spiritually should be. Georgina, let's have a look what the great Georgina is going to say. Enjoy thinking Hashem is always guiding me. Correct. Does Hashem helps everyone. Hashem is the God of everyone. We are, that's why the non-Jewish world have one of their mitzvahs, one of the 7 Noachai laws is to believe in Hashem. Hashem loves everyone. That Psalms, putting trust in Hashem is for everybody, of course. Obviously, as I've said, just because you put your trust doesn't necessarily mean things will go the way you wanted. As I said to you, we definitely tried so hard to pray hard for my dad, and he passed away. So, prayer is not like a vending machine where you put in Coke and you get Coke out. Sometimes things don't get what you want, but it doesn't mean it's not right for Hashem. That was the correct thing, obviously, in Hashem's infinite wisdom. When tragedy strikes in Hashem's world, in a sense, there's no such thing as tragedy. Everything's for good. But anyway, that is the first thing I want to share with you. Next, because we've only got 20 minutes left. And then you're all going to stay because we've got holy guests coming up onto our Facebook to inspire us. Next. And by the way, there's one of my favorite Rebbes called the Kotzker Rebbe. He's very sarky. He likes to be very ironic and sarcastic. So these 3 words we said, Shalach lecha anoshim. He says Shalach lecha anoshim should mean, and it's a message to us, we should send away our anoshim. Anoshim means humanity. But humanity not from a positive perspective, humanity from a negative, from an animalistic perspective. Like, get rid of the animal in us. Shlach lecha anoshim. Get rid of the animal in you. Get rid of the ego in you. Get rid of it. And he was saying that Hashem was really saying to Moshe, they should get rid of their Yetzer Hara, get rid of their animal desire to need to check out the land. And that's something that the Kotzker used to say to his students. Shlach lecha anoshim. I don't want to see the Yetzer Hara. Now, get rid of your Yetzer Hara, get rid of your lower self, get rid of your ego, get rid of your vanity, get rid of your jealousy. Because, and I'll say this right now, we call this talk the spy who loved me. When are we spies? We are spies every time we want something that we don't have, but we're jealous of it. If your friend has got something that you want, that's being a spy. We say every day in Shema, don't be a spy. The word sur, as we said, v'yosuru, they spied out the land. How we spies? Anytime you put your eyes on something which belongs to someone else and yearn for it, that's you're spying it out. That's why jealousy is so toxic. Why? Because you have gained lack of faith, a lack of trust. If you were meant to have it, you'd have it. So if your friend is married to that person, your eyes shouldn't be on that person. If your friend's driving a nice car, your eyes shouldn't be on that car, because if you were meant to have that car, or you were meant to have that wife, you'd have it with me. In other words, jealousy is toxic. That's what the Kotzker is saying. Don't be a spy. Get rid of the Yetzer Hara from our essence. Let's continue, because there's more to say. If you go, and I showed you on my Facebook, the verses, the next few verses are amazing, because it's got these verses. It says, these are the names of the spies. It says, Lamate Reuven, Shemua ben Zakor. The tribe of Reuven was Shemua. The tribe of Shimon was Shaphat. The tribe of Yehuda was Kalev, etc., etc. And then at the end of that, it says, listen to this, it says, Moshe called Yehoshua ben Nun. He called Yeshua. Called Yeshua and said to him, I need to change your name. His name was Hosea. He changed Hosea's name to Yeshua. Here's one of the first times we see the importance of changing names, which change our muzzle. So the question is, why did he change his name? Says the Arizal. Listen to this, Arizal, it's bonkers. He writes this in the Shar Gugulim, the book of reincarnation. So Benj, all my Kabbalists there, Benj and Lani, you're going to love this. He writes, when it says, Lamate Reuven, Shemua ben Zakor, the Arizal says Hashem took the soul of Reuven and put it as what's called an Ibu Neshama, impregnated the soul in with the soul of Shemua. So Reuven came to help. So Reuven himself, the soul of Reuven himself, was there with the spy, trying to help and inspire the spy to behave himself. Are you with me? So every tribe, the head of those tribes, Reuven and Shimon, went along with the ride in their soul. You with it, Benj? That they were given kind of an additional soul guide to assist them. But yet, it didn't work. Even with Reuven being there, Shemua ben Zakor lost the plot and lied about Israel and said Lashon Hara about Hashem and therefore died a very, very gruesome death. Even Reuven tried to help him. Says the Arizal, do you know what we see? We see the blessing of a tzaddik, the blessing of Moshe Rabbeinu, where he changed his name to Yeshua, or Kalev himself, who Kalev would say, do you know why? Because it says, if you look up the verse, everyone have a look, it says that, where is it? Can't see it. Essentially, it says, Vayovei leChevron, and he went to Chevron, and he, Kalev, went away from the other spies. He didn't get a blessing from Moshe. He had to go to the spies, and he went to the cave of Machpelah. It's the first time you see the power of going to the Kivrei Tzadikim. He went to the graves of the righteous. He went to maybe where some of you have been. Maybe I've taken some of you there. To Abraham and Yitzchak and Yaakov, Sarah and Rivka and Leah. He went to those graves, and Kalev said, I need your help. Please talk to Hashem, advocate to Hashem. And he davened to Hashem there, and he was saved from the spies. So Kalev's prayer, Yeshua's getting his name changed by Moshe Rabbeinu, and the blessing he got from Moshe saved their lives, and that was even more important than Reuven coming along for the ride. He couldn't help him in the end. Shimon couldn't help. Shimon couldn't help. He couldn't help. Shofak ben Chori lost the plot in the end. Next. Then what does the verse say? If you go to verse... Here we go. If you go to verse, I think it's number 27. We've got verse number 27 there. So this is where the spies come back and they say, it's a land flowing with milk and honey. Ephes, however, ki az ha'am hayoshe ba'aretz. The people that dwell in the land is powerful. And then they say the cities are fortified. They're very great. We saw the offspring of the giant. They say, you're giant, Benj. And they scared them living daylights out of them. Then they say Amalek dwells there. And all of a sudden they start freaking them out. Says the Ramban, says the famous Nachmanides. The clue to the sin of the spies was in one word. Do you know what that word was? Ephes. But, it said again, it was a land flowing with milk and honey, but... Says the Ramban, and I've done this, and it's, by the way, life-changing, and this could save you a lot of money and give you great deals. If you want to know really what someone is thinking, now you know this amazing piece of information. How many times do people say, like, a compliment, but then they have a whole barrage? Says the Ramban, whatever is said post the but is the real agenda, is the real information. If you want to know what someone really thinks, watch the way they talk. And if they say two sides, if they say there's this and there's this, then beseder. They maybe are being neutral. But the moment someone says, but that's the real agenda. Meaning, they said it's a land flowing with milk and honey. Try to kind of like even the scales, but then they say, but it's a land which eats its inhabitants, says the Ramban, because they didn't want to go to Israel. They had an agenda, which I'll explain a bit more what their agenda was. They didn't want to go to Israel. And therefore, that was revealed in the word but. They shouldn't have said the word but. Moshe Rabbeinu gave them a questionnaire to fill. Is the city fortified or not? You know, are there giants or not? Just give it a tick list. Yes, no, yes, no. The moment you start using your own flowery vocabulary, you are showing people what's really in your heart. And by them saying the word but, that gave away the game that they really had an agenda not to go back to the land of Israel. And the Ramban says, whenever someone says that to you, when he says but, that's the real information. It was really interesting. I learned that Ramban, I'll never forget. I was in my place of work, probably about 20-ish years ago. I was learning that Ramban, and I was called into my boss's office. My boss said, Rabbi Hill, I have to say, I think you're doing some really good work, but... And I was like, oy, oy, oy. And I'm quite cheeky, a little bit cheeky. At the end of him telling me, I have to say to you, I actually showed my boss that Ramban. And I said, okay, at least I understand where your head is. And it was me being super cheeky. Couldn't help it. But generally, it's amazing. Like, for example, right now, if you're listening to the politicians right now, just watch them. I see what's going on with Black Lives Matter right now. Watch certain politicians. They might say the following. They might say, yes, Black Lives Matter. And it's really not good what's happening. But you shouldn't be breaking the law. And that shows that their heart is really not with the Black Lives Matter movement. And it's very interesting if you watch conversations and if it happens in your own life, you know, if any of you are in a relationship after this talk and then, you know, your loved one says, I have to tell you, I think you're amazing, but message me afterwards because I'm sorry, but you need to might need to go to like a counselor or a bit of help if that's what happens, because the but is the real information. Last thing I'd like to share with you is a penultimate thing. Penultimate thing is the following. Watch this. It's in verse 33. Do you know, Benj, you ever like read Gulliver's Travels? Back to your giants? So watch this. Say the people, we saw the Nephilim, which are these giants, And then they said, let's get it right. But which means in English, we saw these giants. We were like grasshoppers in our eyes, and so we were in their eyes. Again, we were like grasshoppers in our eyes, and so we were in their eyes. Listen to the error they make, and then we'll just speak about the errors we make. What were the two errors? Number one, again, remember, this should have just been a questionnaire. Is it fortified or not? You know, which part of Israel do you go into? Instead, they start giving this whole speech, and they start saying, we were like grasshoppers in our eyes, meaning, my dear friends, they had negative self-esteem because they didn't have bitachon, because they didn't have faith in Hashem. They cared too much what other people thought. But more than that, they had low self-esteem in themselves. They didn't think themselves they were worthy. Explains the mystics for us. It's so critical to have positive self-esteem, to have confidence, to know you can do amazing things. If any of you have got something in your gut that you feel you've got a talent that Hashem has given you, that you'd love to utilize, if it's legal and it's kosher, go for it. Do it. Don't let I'm not sure, I'm not worthy, I don't know if I can do it, I'm a bit rubbish, I don't know if I can achieve it, there's so many other people better than me. Shtuyat! If Hashem has given you a gift, and you love it and you're good at it, and it feels in your gut that you should do it, go and do it. I give you a blessing, everybody. That said, as long as it's kosher and it's legal, if there's a talent that you have, I give you a bracha. You should know that you can do it and then do it. And Hashem will help you do it. And that was the problem with the spies. They had this negative self-impression about them. They didn't believe in themselves. They said, we're like grasshoppers in our eyes. How many of you have said that? You know, I'm not worthy. There's so many people better than me in my industry. There's so many. What can I do? I can't really achieve it. Shtuyat! That's us destroying our future by limiting our capabilities and our potential. And I'm not talking about, what used to drive me mad of, let's say on X Factor, you used to see someone who goes in and they were flat as a pancake and they used to sing, and I'm thinking, how can their friends and parents allow them to embarrass themselves? So I'm not talking about if you've got a talent, but it's not really a talent. Kind of, it's a talent in your head, a figment of your imagination. I'm talking about you have a talent. You've checked it out. There are rational people around you who aren't on drugs, who are logical, who are saying, you have a talent. And you have a talent. Yes, you might think you're not the best in the world. Who cares? It's not a comparison between you and other people. Hashem's given you a talent. And as I said before, if it's kosher and it's legal and it's going to help people, do it! Do the talent! Don't have negative self-esteem, as the pasuk, most important pasuk in the whole Torah perhaps says, you should love your friends like you love yourself. Meaning, I'll come to you in a minute, Kaplan. Meaning you cannot love someone else till you love yourself. You have to learn to love yourself, then you can learn others. And again, if you love yourself, then you'll do spiritual great things. What has Johnny Kaplan said? First time not to work too hard. No, Johnny, work hard in the area of your spirituality, in the area of kosher dating. That's what you should be working hard in and do the minimum, do the hishtadlut in the area of your livelihood. You're already doing that. You're already fulfilling your passion. I just don't want you to add to your repertoire of activities in your day, but then let's not make it personal. But the point, you go, and I'm saying, everybody, same thing with dating. Some people are fearful to date. Don't be fearful. That's you stopping your capabilities. Because as we said at the beginning, Hashem works with you. You want to do something, Hashem helps you. You don't want to do it, then He won't. Correct. So that's the first part. But the second part's even scarier. What did the spies say? The spies said, and so we were grasshoppers in their eyes. Chutzpah! How do they know how the giants see them? Maybe the giants didn't even see them. How many of you go back home sometimes and say, oh my gosh, that person really doesn't like me. That person really hates me. That person detests me. That person can't stand. How do you know? Maybe actually they like you. We are not entitled, and it's not a spiritually positive thing, to start thinking how other people view you. To be quite honest, it's really unimportant. One of the amazing things about my dad was, one of the many, he really couldn't care what other people thought. He did the right thing. And if it wasn't popular, c'est la vie. That's what Hashem wanted. If it was the kind and truthful and the right thing to do, he was going to do it, even if he didn't get support, even if he didn't get clapping and applause and lots of hearts like that going up right now. Even if he did, he don't do it for the popular recognition. And again, what we're saying here is, stop thinking how other people view you.